Okay, for additional lesson 3, we are going to be defining radicals as well as simplifying those radicals. For this first video, we are just going to focus solely on defining what radicals are. So let's go ahead and get started. The symbol that is used to indicate a root is called a radical. So anytime that we are talking about a root, okay, we are referring to a radical, and therefore is read x radical n, or the nth root of x. So this down here, okay, we typically say it as the nth root of x. In the radical symbol, the horizontal line is called the vinculum. The quantity under the vinculum is called the radicand, and the quantity n written to the left is called the index. You really don't need to know those vocabs. We will refer to this as being the index, and we will also refer to the quantity underneath called the radicand. I had never heard of the vinculum until I honestly found this definition here on the internet. Okay, a couple of the common roots are the square root. The first one, we've been working with the square root quite a bit. Notice with there's a square root, there is no number out in front. It is implied that there is a 2 out in front. That's where the word square comes from. We have also occasionally dealt with cubed roots, okay, as far as the cubed root, and that just means that there's a 3 out in front. There are an infinite number of roots, and the index can be any natural number greater than 1, which honestly that doesn't need to be there because all natural numbers. Oh wait, no. That does need to be there because 1 cannot be an index. That's why I wrote that. Should have trusted myself. So anyway, you can have a square root, a cubed root, a 4th root, a 5th root, a 6th root, a 7th root, okay? There are all these different types of roots. Up until this point, I feel like you guys have only dealt with square roots and very rarely cubed roots. So let's take a second to talk about what all of these other roots mean. So roots and exponents are inverses of each other, okay? And we've talked about inverses of each other. That's where we switch our x and y. And inverses of each other means that they are opposites of each other. So when I am trying to figure out what the square root of 25 is, most of you guys can look at that and say, oh, the square root of 25 is just 5, okay? Well, the reason that the square root of 25 is 5 is because of this statement up top here. 5 squared means 5 times 5, which is 25. So essentially what we're doing with the square root is we are switching 25 and 5. So now 25 is on the inside, and 5 ends up becoming what your solution was. Okay, so that's why when you guys have went over this before, you know, I've asked you what the square root of a number is, they ask you, well, what times what, or sorry, what times itself equals that number? That's because what you're doing is you're doing the opposite of squaring that number. Okay, so the cubed root of 64, the fact that this says the cubed root of 64 means that I am looking for a number times that same number times that same number that equals 64. So what number times itself equals this 64? Well, 1 times 1 times 1 would give me 1, so that doesn't work. 2 times 2 times 2 would give me 8. 3 times 3 is 9, times another 3 is 27, so it's not going to be that one. What about 4 cubed? 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times another 4 gives me 64. So since we discovered, sorry, I kind of squeaked there. Since we discovered that 4 times 4 times 4 equals 64, that means that the cubed root of 64 is 4. Okay? And like I said, we can even go as high as what is the 5th root of 32? What is the 5th root of 32? Well, what times itself times itself times itself times itself equals 32. So if you're trying to figure this stuff out in your head, You got 5 numbers. They all have to be multiplied by the same number. The first one I try is 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. Well, 5 ones multiplied together is just 1, so it's not that one. So what about 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which would be the same thing as 2 to the 5th, right? Well, 2 times 2 is 4, times another 2 is 8, times another 2 is 16, times another 2 is 32. So we can see that 2 to the 5th power equals 32. So that means that the 5th root of 32 equals 2. Okay? Now, some of you guys might be hearing that, and it's going to be very helpful for you to be able to figure this stuff out in your head. Those of you guys that plan on doing something in an engineering field or mathematics, you're definitely going to want to be able to figure these out in your head. It's going to help you out in the long run. Some of you guys are like, Mr. Schieber, I don't care to do this in my head. How do I do it on my calculator? Well, that's pretty simple. Okay? So we've got one of our big calculators like I have here. Okay? Most of you guys, if you are looking at this, will see the square root button there. So here we have the 4th root of 1296. Okay, the 4th root of 1296. Most of you guys would try to enter 4 and then would hit the second button and then hit the square root button. And when you plug that into your calculator, it gives you this. And this is not the 4th root of 1296. Okay, what this gives you is 4 times the square root of 1296. So how do we make that 4 number small? Okay, well, if you look at the one right above this square root, this one here, you'll see that there's a little x in front of that root. Okay, and that x is what we use to represent or indicate that we want to enter a different index than just the square root. So the first thing that you're going to do when you use this calculator here is you're going to enter your index number. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click a 4. And you should see a 4 pop up on your screen there. Then I'm going to hit the second button and hit the root with the X. Now when I do this, if you are using a calculator like mine, it's going to pop up and that 4 is going to be small now. So you can see that 4 is the index. If you have an older calculator and you do this, your calculator will show this, okay? And that means the same thing, okay? The technology just isn't as advanced on that one there, okay? So now I've got the 4th root to show up. After I have the 4th root to show up, I'm just going to enter the radicand, which is that number that's underneath. So I'm going to type in 1296. And again, my really nice calculators will pop up with the whole thing underneath the root. The old calculators will pop up, and actually I drew that line too far. Actually, I just did all of it wrong. The old calculators will look like this. So you'll want to make sure that you close your parentheses after you're done with it. Okay? And after you have that, you're just going to press enter, and it will give you your answer. Your answer is just simply 6. Okay? So, nothing too hard. Just make sure you enter your index number in first, and then you have to use the square root button with the X out in front of it. Okay, and then